Hello, and welcome to your weekly astrology for the week of March 23rd through the 29th. I'm your astrologer, Laura Chung. I'm a Western tropical astrologer. I use the whole sign house system. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your well wishes for my solar return that was on March 20th, my solar return. But for everybody, it was the beginning of the astrological new year. Ramadan Mubarak for everyone who celebrates. Also, what was the other one? The Persian New Year, the spring. I forget the name of it now. Oh my gosh, it starts with an N. It's like in my head. And also, happy Aries season. Does anybody else feel so much more energized? I wasn't feeling so well last week, and I think it was like the burnout I was starting to feel with all of the Pisces stuff going on in my chart, and also just like the last sort of like water energy leaving my life, I'm a double fire sign, so I thrive in fire energy. And so we're back. Okay. There's a couple of announcements I need to make. What was the first one? The first one is I've officially opened up Astrology 102. In Astrology 102, we learn about the transits, how to read them, how to interpret them. And that's usually what people want to know, right? They want to know how to read their natal chart, but they want to understand, like, on these weekly forecasts, like, how does this affect me? Like, okay, this is great for the collective, but like, how does this affect me? And you learn about secondary progressions, how to read your solar return chart, and annual perfections. But the caveat is you would have had to have studied with either me in Astrology 101 or with another astrologer. So that starts on Thursday, May 14th for 12 weeks. And yeah, and we're just finishing up the second cohort of Astrology 101, and then we'll be starting that in May. And then there was one last thing that I'm forgetting. But I just wanted to also say thank you so much to the Patreon members who support this channel. There is the 555 per month tier, and they literally fund this channel. Like, you get weekly astrology forecasts for free. I mean, obviously, I'm the astrologer, but these beautiful souls who fund this out of the kindness of their heart, one day, if I have all of your permissions, maybe I'll just read your first names because I don't want to give away your privacy, but like, y'all, like, these people support my work, they fund this channel, and then the North Node tier also, they fund this channel, and I get to deliver monthly astrology forecasts for their rising sign. And it's something that I wanted to do last year that I was just afraid of because I was like, oh, this is going to be such a time commitment, you know? And usually by this time of the month, I'm like scrambling. I'm like, oh my God, I have to get them done. But I always do somehow. And it's a way for me to give back for people who can't afford, maybe during this financial season of their life, they can't afford the larger reading, or they can't afford to take the astrology class with me, the star school. So this is just a way that I can at least offer something for those people. And also it got me thinking, I'm going through a lot of things in my own personal life, but one of the things that I'm trying to focus on is maybe doing less, and which breaks my heart because I love doing different things. But offering less, and also because I do so many different things, like I do astrology, but I'm also writing a book, and I also host two podcasts, and there's just my energy has just been spread so thin that, like, actually, I think I want to focus on teaching and mentoring this year. And so if I can cut away some of the other things, then I can focus more on offering offerings that are more just like, they're more affordable, to be quite frank, like more accessible for people. So like doing 30-minute readings for less money, or like Yeah, things like that I've been thinking about, reworking some of my website and offering. So when that is all set up, I'm probably going to tackle that when I get back to the States. But when that is all set up, I will let you know. But for now, my offerings are one-on-one consultations. And then, which my schedule has been sort of like limited since being out here because I'm like the time difference is crazy. And then Star School, and then this channel. So those are sort of the three ways to work with me. So anyway, this is all to say, I just wanted to say thank you to the Patreon members for funding this work. I appreciate y'all so much. I love reading your comments. And oh my God, I'm just realizing that my eyeliner is like sticking to my eye. So my eye is like, and I'm working against the time because it's about sunset right now and I don't want to lose the light. So let's get going. For the recap, what did I have written down? Now, I really just started noticing things around the new moon in Pisces. And I think I hope I mentioned like how optimistic that new moon felt. Like it felt expansive, it felt healing, it felt like mutual aid. And I think the activists who were going to Cuba are there now, or they're like on their way. But that new moon in Pisces being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer that just went direct, Venus in Aries was squaring that Jupiter in Cancer in an overcoming square. It just felt very like we need to take action for what we believe in. We need to start taking care of each other. We need to start acting. We need to start vocalizing the things that we believe in with Mercury connecting with the North Node in that new moon signature. And I felt like the news stories that were coming out last week were very symbolic of sort of that new moon chart. And so I think this week, the activists were started to arrive in Cuba. And if you didn't know, the US has sanctioned Cuba for years and then recently had an oil blockade on Cuba, restricting Cuba's ability to receive oil, which basically powers the whole island. You need oil to cook, you need oil to do a lot of things, And so that is why the activists are going to Cuba to provide aid and necessary aid to the Cubans over there. And I was listening to this mundane astrologer. His name is Dan Waits. And actually, Jonathan Louis Dent, who I've done podcasts together with him, he's a colleague, he's a friend. He pointed me to this video of him talking about how one of Neptune's significations is oil. And I think it's interesting that Saturn and Neptune just had their conjunction in the sign of Aries on February 20th. And then since then, the US has sort of, it's been doing its thing, right? Which is sort of doing its thing, which, God, like being the bullies of the world. But since that Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, they preemptively, with Israel, preemptively striked Iran. And Iran was like, okay, we're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. And effectively, this is going to affect the oil prices or the gas prices for the United States and essentially like crippling our economy because our currency is the petrodollar. So the US dollar isn't backed by gold, it's backed by oil. So I think that's interesting given the significations of Neptune, which is the ruler of the USA's second house of Capricorn. And then that Neptune, the natal position, should I just show you the chart? And this all came about because one of my students asked where the currency of the dollar is in the United States Sibley chart. And I started to like sort of go down this like rabbit hole. So this is the United States Sibley chart, and Neptune in Virgo is up here in the 10th whole sign house. And, Neptune being angular and in the sign of Virgo, it is sort of this illusion of the American dream, quote unquote. Meanwhile, what you're really doing is being of servitude to the empire, and the dream of the Epstein class. Whoever coined that is freaking brilliant. And then here in the second whole sign house is Pluto in Capricorn. We just went through the exact return, I believe, 2 years ago. And then, this eighth house stellium of other people's resources, right? So as the transiting Neptune in Pisces was sort of going through the fourth house, opposing this natal position, I think it exposed how vulnerable the US dollar, I mean, now, right? Like how vulnerable the US dollar is if the US doesn't actually have oil. And that is also why the US is so interested in Is Not Real, having a presence there in West Asia, because they need their sort of colony of Is Not Real to be in West Asia so that they can have hegemonic control over, well, the whole world, right? The US has 750 military bases around the world, but also being able to have control over that area and its oil so that the oil is backing the dollar, the petrodollar, okay? And when Saturn and Neptune came together in the sign of Aries and it's conjuncting conjuncting, it's forming a conjunction to the United States Sibley IC, the roots, the foundation of the United States is going to break because, again, Saturn rules the second and third houses of Capricorn and Aquarius. And, Saturn and Neptune is the dissolution of boundaries, borders, of reality itself. And I think a lot of US Americans are going through another phase, and we're going to keep, breaking the veil. The veil is continuing to lift for more and more people, and I'm hopeful for this because there are average US Americans that did not care about the pedophilia, the rape, the school bombings, the massacre of children, the genocide of an entire population in Gaza, now in Lebanon, Syria, or bombing schools in Iran, let alone, come on, like we have to redefine what violence is like the United States has a slave system within the prison industrial complex. Okay, houselessness is violence. Food insecurity is a form of violence, which a lot of people don't think of it like that, but not having access to healthcare is violence, right? All of these things, I think, people didn't necessarily care about because it's like, oh, it's their problem. That doesn't affect me. You're going to start to care about it once you can't afford to live. I think people are going to start to care when their gas prices come raise to a point where they can afford gas. And because of the way the United States infrastructure is set up, you need your car for everything. You need your car to go to work. You need your car to like literally be mobile. The United States does not have a high speed rail system or any kind of unless you live in New York City, right? Or like a big city, there's no access to public transportation. So if you can't go to work, I think it's a good thing because it's going to force people to sort of share resources and sort of force people to be in community. And it's going to wake a lot of people up when they realize, I have to pay $10 per gallon to, just get my car to the train station so I could take the train to the job that I hate. And my taxes are going to fund this, war and all of these things that the United States is doing without my consent. And, it's a ripple effect. So even though all of us are appalled, we're like, wait, you should have cared about this stuff when people were screaming about it 3 years ago or 10 years ago, 75 years, 80 years, Palestinians have been screaming about this. The indigenous people of Turtle Island have been screaming about this. Black people in America have been screaming about this. And then, little by little, people wake up and they're like, oh, like this is the truth. That's the Neptune opposition. Like, oh, I didn't realize. And so I think that, you know, Cuba, I didn't look into the chart of Cuba, but I think Cuba is just sort of the victim of US sanctions and what the United States as a whole is going through, because it's like, the United States is it's so interesting because you can always tell a bully's weaknesses by the people that they bully. Like Puerto Rico, for example, and Cuba. These are small little islands, but the people are just they have so much national pride for, their people, right? So Cuba is a communist country. It's a small little island, but yet they're so threatened of Cuba, a small little island, that they feel so threatened that they have to like block Cuba and sanction them. Just doesn't make sense, You could tell the weaknesses. It's like, geez, are you that afraid of communism? It's crazy, but anyway, that's the US Sibley chart in relation to Cuba. I didn't realize I was going to go off on that like long tangent, but I have Mercury in Pisces, and I got a solar return reading this morning from a fellow Mercury in Pisces. We have Mercury in Pisces at the same degree, 11 degrees. And one of the things we were laughing about is that we always go off on these side quests as we're talking. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if like my weekly astrology forecasts members watch and they're just like, where is she going with this? It's all going to come together. Okay. It's all going to come together, but I need to go off on this side quest first. Okay. So I talked about the activists bringing aid into Cuba, which was very new moon in Pisces, Neptune signification of being oil, the US and the petrodollar. Okay. And then and then this is connected to the 7 stages of the decline of, the 7 stages of empire. This is an essay written by Sir John Glubb, and I references his essay a lot when I talk about the fate of empires and how he writes in his essay that empires collapse in their former form every 250 years, which is essentially the Pluto cycle of a nation. And also, this year, the United States will turn 250. This is the year of its 250 solar return. And so the last stage of the stages of empire is decline. And one of the things that he says about a sign that you can tell that an empire is sort of in its last phase decline, or I call it like the extinction burst, or the death rattle, is that the currency is devalued. The currency of the nation is devalued, and then there comes this sort of like economic collapse. And so the fact that, oh my God, I saw a tweet today. No, it wasn't a tweet. I think it was a thread that somebody wrote. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. That's just a traumatic response I have to like really terrible situations. It's to like expel the energy. But they wrote that the US and Israel bombs Iran and then sanctions Iran, because that's what they do. But then this will cripple, like the raising of the gas prices for average Americans will affect the economy. So then now Donald J. Trump is trying to lift sanctions on Iran so that they allow the Strait of Hormuz to open so that the US economy isn't like crippled. And it's just like, again, I think the United States hubris is ultimately what's going to be the downfall of the empire. Like, we don't actually have to do anything. They are having an internal combustion themselves, which is why I personally believe that Trump being president is expediting a timeline. I personally believe that if Kamala Harris or any other Democrat won, it would have just delayed the inevitable fall of this empire, maybe by like a decade. But the fact that Trump and his administration, they're just like these ghouls, these like they're not even ghouls. They're just the Epstein class. They're just going to implode in on themselves. And so, what we have to do is we have to create parallel systems to be ready for the eventual collapse. And what's interesting is that if you're from a collectivist culture, we already have those systems in place without like I don't know if I should say this publicly. Maybe I'll say this in a private way. But basically, like in Korean culture, it's this like economic system outside of like the banking system where we exchange money in sort of this like way where you don't accrue interest so that like one month this family gets this money, then the next month this family gets this money and it's all like shared within the community. If anybody's Korean, do you remember the name of that? But I remember my mom and my parents, well, my mom was actually like the spearhead of our family, but I remember my parents being a part of that and being like, oh, that's so smart. Like you're essentially just sharing the resource of money and every family gets a different turn. So that's what I mean by building these parallel systems. You have to share resources in a way that is not reliant on the government. And hopefully, I forget which weekly astrology forecast now this was about when I read Resma Menakem's book about white culture and how a lot of white folks, if we're asking them to divest from whiteness, like the culture of whiteness, then what is their thing that they're going to? Oftentimes, people are nationalistic. People cling to whiteness because they've lost their sense of belonging in their sort of like cultural community. So how, as we, as white people themselves, like how are you building your identity beyond being like white as a culture or American as a culture? And how are we collectively as US Americans going to redefine that? If we're all divesting from whiteness. Okay, so what I also found interesting around the new moon was that an estimated 2.5 million people stop using ChatGPT. Please stop using AI and ChatGPT because not only does it rot your brain, like it's really easy to just like ask a question and like do research. Um, but one question on ChatGPT equals one bottle of water. That's how much water it takes. And if you didn't know, there are all these data centers all across the United States that need water to cool them down. Because it's essentially like these devices, right? They're like little computers that you're sort of like asking to do a lot. And so there are these data centers that also are built in predominantly black and brown neighborhoods because so much of the waste goes out into these neighborhoods. And again, one person, one question is a bottle of water. So let's say this is like, oh my gosh, I don't even know, 2 liters of water. I can't do the math. Somebody else do the math for me. So this is probably like what, 4 questions, maybe a little bit more than that. Like we just have to be more mindful of our technological uses. And if you're an astrologer and you're using ChatGPT, like go fuck yourself. Like, why are you even an astrologer? You know what I'm saying? Like, ugh. And I just thought that was very also just like Jupiter and Cancer moving direct, new moon. It's like people are starting to realize these things and how everything is interconnected and how, water unfortunately has become a scarce resource because people are hoarding it. Okay, another thing that happened, which oh, okay. So another thing that happened, and I won't spend that much time on it because I just think this is another example of even if you're a leftist and even if you're a revolutionary and you're still a man, you could still be a very shitty person. So on March 18th, oh, trigger warning, essay, sexual assault, themes of rape are coming up right now. So I'll give you 3 seconds. Okay. So on March 18th, which was the new moon in Pisces, Dolores Huerta wrote on her, I don't know if it was an Instagram post or she wrote somewhere that Cesar Chavez over 60 years ago raped her. And as a result of those rapes, she became pregnant. And she held this a secret for 60 years because she didn't want it to affect the movement. Okay, Cesar Chavez is this like revolutionary, people put him on a pedestal and but he was still a terrible man. He was still a rapist. So I just wanted to look at their charts to see, okay, like why did she decide to come out now? Why did she um let me see, Dolores Huerta. Okay. Wait, is this her? Is it 8 p.m.? Hmm. Let me make sure this is the right time. I'm pretty sure it was 8 p.m. Dolores. This is an A-rated chart, so it's pretty good. Okay, it is 8 p.m. Okay. So, as you can see, oh wait, I'm gonna I'm gonna put this with the new moon in Pisces as the outer ring. So she has her Mars in Pisces, okay, in the house of sex. And so on that new moon in Pisces, she was also going through her Mars return. Another thing that I saw is Jupiter in Cancer direct now on this new moon is conjunct to her natal Pluto in Cancer. So her Jupiter was sort of expanding her experience of this abuse, of what happened to her that was traumatic. And then I noticed that she has a 22-degree Virgo moon, which is pretty like it's a 3-degree orb, but it's in an opposition to her Mars, and it was in an opposition to that new moon. So these eclipses in Virgo and Pisces were sort of activating her Mars moon, and we had a lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 3rd. So I'm sure she was thinking about coming out and telling people for a moment there. And then she chose the new moon in Pisces to sort of actually come out with it. What I found interesting is when you overlay her chart with Cesar Chavez's chart. Oh my goodness. So they have an exact moon opposition. So her moon is at 22 Virgo, his moon is at 22 Pisces. So even though he's dead, the even though a person is dead, their chart is still activated even post mortem. So this was a new moon in Pisces. He has a Pisces moon. So obviously, and the opposition with his moon and her moon exactly. Like, I was like, what? He also has his Jupiter in Pisces, his Mercury in Pisces. Okay, so an exalt his I'm sorry, his Jupiter is in its domicile of Pisces, connected to the moon. I'm sure he had some sort of like God complex. He thought he was like the shit. He really like ate up everything that he said and he believed. I also think it's interesting that his Chiron conjuncts her Mercury exactly, and I haven't looked into the transits at all of maybe when this could have happened, but I think him wounding her throat chakra. In medical astrology, Taurus rules the throat, and her not being able to talk about it for so long. And she finally is able to talk about it as Uranus is exiting from Taurus, in the next month. And I think it's something that, again, I think she said that she didn't want to come out with it because she didn't want to disrupt the movement that they were a part of. And it's like, it's so sad that women have to hold the burden of trauma and abuse that they've personally experienced for the sake of other people. Like that just to me was so crushing to read. I was like, personally, when something happens to me, I'm bringing everyone down with me. I'm like, that scene in Sex and the City where she posts the flyers of what's his name, Richard Wright, all over New York City. Like that's the energy that I would be bringing. I would literally be on I would put it on a billboard of what this person did wrong to me. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that she felt like she couldn't say it, just, oh my God, I was like, that's horrible. And then her natal Mars is square to his natal Mars. So his Mars is at 20 degrees of Gemini and hers is at 19 degrees of Pisces. So clearly they had a very sort of combative. I don't know. I didn't do enough research. But abuse, violence, it's there. The way that he sort of took his position of power and abused it. It's very, his chart is giving guru energy. Like I know best. I'm the guru. They're both Aries. Both of their suns are exalted in Aries. She has a 20-degree Aries sun. He has a 10-degree Aries sun. And, they're only 3 years apart. So clearly they have very similar placements. They both have their Venus in Taurus. But yeah, I was just sort of curious as to see what's why now, I mean, I I give her so much respect and kudos that she finally did it. I think she's 96, but I was like, why now? Why is this the moment? Why not in a different transit? And so I was like, oh, March 18th, new moon in Pisces. She's experiencing some of those, eclipses and, a Virgo moon could be really cautious. It could be, I don't know, maybe she felt feelings of servitude to the movement in ways that weren't fair to her, that she sort of internalized as part of her burden. But anyway, that's also what happened on March 18th. And yeah, I think lastly, on March 20th, BTS, they released their first album in 4 years on March 20th, which was interesting timing, the Aries Ingress. And then on March 21st, they did this huge free concert here in Seoul. And there was all this discourse online about their album. And I was part of that discourse because I was actually excited about this one because it was named Arirang, which is an old Korean folk song about our resilience and our Han and how we overcome. And then to find out that they recorded this album in Los Angeles, collaborated with Diplo, and one of their music videos had Lily Reinhart in it. Just what? I was expecting them to come out in those Jinu kind of hanboks, they didn't have to copy K-pop Demon Hunters, but I was expecting more Korean culture and, their BTS, which is short for Bangtan Boys, which is, what is Bangtan Boys is, oh my God, what is it called? BTS stands for Bangtan Soyeondan, which means bulletproof Boy Scouts. And so their followers or their fans are called Army. And it's interesting because I think in the beginning of their career, this is what I've heard from BTS stans, that they were a lot more outspoken. They were really into politics. And then as they started getting like really, really popular, like I think they're the most popular boy group, man group in the world. And they're owned by Hype Entertainment, which the American CEO of that company is fucking Scooter Braun. Ew, 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 ew. He's a Zionist. And then that all started making sense. You know, the music industry is terribly corrupt. I think they control these boys, these men, because now they're all 30. Now they're all going through their Saturn return. I don't think they had full creative control over their music. I think that they, by contract, were forced to come back from the army and kind of rush this album. And I don't think they had full creative control because if they did, more of the songs would have been sang in Korean. I listened to the album yesterday and most of the songs are in English. And I was just like, I understand they have more of a global audience now, but I was really disappointed because I was like, they could have done so many cool things. Like, Korean music, the folk music is already so cool. Okay. Our history is filled with myth and lore. And I mean, yes, we've been colonized so many times, but I feel like that's what makes us crazy. Koreans are intense and crazy. Okay. We are fueled by our Han. I feel like they could have gone through the history of Korea, like the colonial oppression and how through their music, they became this worldwide sensation through their army, their fan base. And then they had to serve the army, even though they were privileged at that point. That didn't excuse them of their filial duty, of their, even though it's the fucking military industrial complex, which I do not support. But like they could have sort of gone there and like talked about their time in the military and what that did and how that changed them to then coming out as men. They're in their Saturn return and now they're sort of face to face with their army again. Like they could have done so many things. They should have hired me as their like historical girly. But I just think looking deeper into it, they're definitely being controlled by their handlers and that's really sad to me because I honestly think they're talented. I love Jungkook's voice. I think he's very talented, but again, like another one bites the dust. So, BTS was formed in 2010 and then their first album came out in 2013. So this was sort of the beginning of Neptune in Pisces and Pluto in Capricorn. So that's sort of like transformation of Capricorn, which is the South Korea's 10th house. Wait, no. South Korea. Wait, hold on. Excuse me. South Korea. Okay, so South Korea, its chart is really creepy because it looks very similar to Is Not Reals because they were both born in 1948. So they have very similar placements. But sorry, the Capricorn section of South Korea is Capricorn. It's the fourth house because it's a Libra rising, similar to Is Not Real. And the Pisces section is the sixth house. And so South Korea is 77. It's in a sixth house perfection year. And so it's sort of like this album coming out as Neptune has left Pisces, as Pluto has left Capricorn. I was like, there would have been such an amazing opportunity for them to sort of like, with that Saturn Neptune conjunction, to sort of like reimagine their identity and sort of come out of this like military service, which is very Aries, as like, okay, this is our new identity, new but old. Like we are still going to be a hip hop group, which I've already talked about this so many times on TikTok that K-pop is Black music repackaged as Korean. Fine. Okay, you did that. How can you then pay tribute to Black culture? How can you sort of, again, like, how can we repair? The past is the past, yes, but like, how are we moving forward and taking action differently, you know? And, Saturn to me is also legacy and tradition and like honoring Korea's tradition and not sympathizing with the colonizer and not sympathizing with our oppressors. I was just like, all these white people are involved in your music. Like Korean culture is so cool on its own. Like, why do you need white validation? Like, you don't need that. You don't even need Netflix. Like, they're already big. Anyway, that is my rant. That concludes the recap. Um, yeah, just so disappointing. But they're just a music group, and I'm not a stan. I was introduced to BTS later on in my life, so what do I know? Okay, so before I get into the weekly astrology forecast, which is kind of short this week, we're sort of finishing off March with a waxing phase of the moon. And I think we're all sort of like in this Aries energy of like initiating and taking action. And so I just wanted to pull a card for the collective as like an overall energy. Okay, now like the sun is really down. Okay. What does the collective of, I guess, the YouTube viewers, the YouTube community need to know for this week? What does the YouTube community need to know for this week? My time in South Korea is coming to a close, so um yeah, I'm really sad to be leaving, but um people are like, "Are you staying there? Did you move to Korea?" And one of the things that, I mean, I could, right? I've been told my whole life to go back to where I came from, and I've definitely thought about it, but I do have a lot of work that I feel called to do back in the United States. And by way of immigration, I was born in New York and I do feel a sense of responsibility to my community. And it's something that I do want to like, I want to be more, I mean, I'm already a global person, but um, and one day I hope to share more of like my insights here, but I do feel like my role here is to be a bridge for Koreans of the diaspora to connect with the land, connect with the food, connect with our indigenous spiritual practices. So I do feel called to go back, but also come back here. So, okay. What is the general for the YouTube community? What is the general like advice, guidance for this week? What is the general guidance? Energy. Ooh, okay. We got the Six of Cups. So, this energy is about nostalgia and sort of going to moments in the past that were bittersweet. I'm also getting this feeling that for a lot of person, they have to connect back with their joy. Like, what made you feel a sense of childlike wonder? What were some of those things that you did as a kid that you just could do endlessly? Like I remember as a kid, now I was a latchkey kid, elder millennial. We literally lived outside. Like like in the summertime, my sister and I and all the neighborhood kids, we would leave our home at 9 a.m. and my mom would be like, Laura, Sarah, it's dinner time. So we would go back, everybody would go back to their homes for dinner. And then after dinner, we'd all come back outside until like like nighttime, basically. We literally lived outside. And I think living outside, playing with dirt, getting dirty, not having social media, not having like being chained to screens, not knowing, and that, but that was a caveat, right? Like we didn't know what was going on. I think that really was such a special moment in history because we were really tapped into our childlike wonder and our sense of imagination and world building. Like we would build forts out in our backyard, and and that was a very like communal kind of like we had to play with kids that we didn't necessarily like, but were forced to by way of our block. You know what I mean? And so this sort of is giving like, okay, this week, as we're in Aries season, Aries is exalted in the sign of, the sun is exalted in the sign of Aries. It's like new energy. Um, Mercury's going forward. All of these planets have now gone forward. So everything is moving forward. We're taking action. And yeah, there's this sense of like, possibility and wonder, but it's the Six of Cups. So this is sort of tied to something from the past, something that maybe you started even last year, but with all the planets going retrograde, you sort of had to pause on the project. But now with everything going forward again, it's like, okay, we got to go back to that, you know? But I love this card. It's giving like, childhood memories. It's like playing in the dirt, getting our hands dirty. And I think that's why I'm enjoying Korea so much because there's like yes, there's dark sides of Korea, but there's also this like um I guess it's sort of like how in Japan they have like kawaii. It's like to hide some of the darker things that happened that the Japanese did. But in Korea, there's all these like cutesy things. Like you go to these stores and they have all these like cutesy, if you've been to Korea, you know what I'm talking about. But it really is like playing with your inner child. It's really fun and lighthearted. And so I feel like I've been tapping back into my childhood wonder and playing outside. And whenever I hang out with kids, I feel that energy because they're just so in the moment and they're just so focused on like the now. That's also Aries energy. It's like we have to really take advantage of this moment because we don't know when the same kind of energies are going to come back. So that's the advice. On March 23rd, Mercury will conjunct with the North Node at 8 degrees of Pisces. And you already experienced this like a couple of times. The last time was March 17th when Mercury was retrograde and it was conjunct the North Node. And this was also a feature in the new moon in Pisces. Mercury was conjunct the North Node. And so Mercury is about communication, news, revelations. And when it's connected to the North Node like that, this could have been like an aha moment that you got, especially around the new moon in Pisces. But it was retrograde. And so now with Mercury connecting back to the North Node, you could be sort of revisiting some of those themes, you know? Some astrologers consider the nodes to be malefic in nature. Other astrologers think they're karmic points. I feel like there is some sort of destined moment when planets connect to the North Node, depending on where they are in your chart or where they're transiting in the moment. Like if Mercury is your time lord, for example, and and Mercury is transiting through like your seventh house. And let's say, so you're a Virgo rising. I mean, this could be like a fated contract or an agreement or a meeting of some kind, you know? So I think I decided to put that in there just because it was a feature of that new moon. So yeah. And then on March 24th, there will be a void of course moon for 11 hours and 56 minutes, starting from 6:37 p.m. Eastern time. So I always like to give a shout out when there's a long void of course moon, not to start anything new, or if you don't want anything to happen. So something that came into my mind was like, let's say you have to like go on a date with somebody that you were sort of set up with, but like you don't want anything to happen. this would be a good day to go on the void of course moon because nothing will come of that meeting. But I would say if you do want something to come about or you are sort of hoping for a connection, this is not a good day to like go on a first date or yeah, start anything new that you want to have something manifest from it. On March 25th, the sun will conjunct, ooh, it's getting dark. Okay. March 25th, the sun will conjunct Saturn in Aries at 4 degrees. And also on that day, the sun will sextile Pluto in Aquarius at 5 degrees. March 25th is such like, it's, oh my God, my eyeliner is now smudging. It's such a powerful fucking day. So March 25th is a day when if you want to sort of like form a boundary with somebody or you want to like confront somebody, this is such a good day because the sun is exalted and it's sort of like, as an Aries, I experienced this like, I'm just sort of doing my thing as an exalted Aries because, like, I do believe exalted planets do have this sort of like entitlement feeling. They have like confidence. And so I'll just be doing my thing. And then I'll just get so many haters because I'm sort of shining my light onto their insecurities. And instead of taking that and having some sort of self-awareness around their own securities, they'll project that onto me and start being a hater. And I'm like, that is your problem. Like you're insecure. You know what I'm saying? And so having the sun in Aries in that specific Aries section of your chart, you might just be feeling really confident, or if you, it might be shining a light onto an aspect of yourself where you don't feel confident yet. Okay, so you just feel like it's the sun in Aries is shining the light into a part of your insecurity. And then when it's meeting with Saturn in its fall in Aries, this is also sort of like, okay, there's a part of me that feels like, okay, there's a couple of ways to read this. This is like, when the sun meets Saturn, there's like a serious tone, right? There's some sort of reality check that you have to have. But Saturn in Aries is, it can manifest one of two ways, which is sort of this authoritarian sort of dictator figure, right? I mean, if you just look out at what's happening in the world, but then also Saturn represents structures. Saturn represents boundaries. That's why I said this could be a great day to assert your boundaries. It represents like tradition and patriarchy and also time and land and stuff like that. So again, you could be taking this moment to assert your boundaries on something or take something really seriously and say, okay, whatever Aries, wherever you have Aries in your chart, you're like, I'm going to take this seriously and I'm going to act now. I'm going to take this responsibility on myself because also Aries is about your agency and the ability to direct your actions in the way that you will and not waiting for somebody else to sort of give you the answers. And then the sun in a harmonious relationship with Pluto and Aquarius at 5 degrees. When a planet is connected to the outer planet like that in a harmonious way, I always think of like the sun being you, the sun being like your life force energy and the way that you shine and the way that you sort of like radiate, right? And then when it's in a connection to an outer planet, which is collective, Pluto and Aquarius is like, we the people, the power of the people. How are you sort of like using that collective power in sort of like what you're personally advocating for? How can you also meet other people who are like value driven, heart driven, conscious people who are in activism? Because I always say this like, there has to be like a Venn diagram of activism, spirituality, and there's another thing here. I'm thinking about what that is. Because, like, when I meet activists, they're so doom and gloom. It like drives me crazy. They're so like, everything's gonna end. We're all fucked. We're all cooked. There's no point. And then, like, they're missing the understanding of that there's more going on than the surface. There's all of this collective energy of the unseen realms of like our collective ancestors and like the spirit world that's also working in tandem with us. But we, because we're physical, we're able to like usher that in the physical realm. But I don't think like activists are necessarily spiritual. And then you have the spiritual people who are like love and light and all that shit, but they're not rooted in liberation. So they're sort of like disassociated. If we could combine those two things, oh my God, we're fucking unstoppable. So that's like Sun sextile Pluto, Sun conjunct Saturn. Now, in the collective level, the Sun represents the leader and conjunct Saturn, which to me is a planet of death. It's the Grim Reaper. Sun sextile Pluto in Aquarius, which is also a planet of death. I don't know. Maybe on this day, another leader dies. I still believe Benjamin Milikowski is dead and they're just not telling us. They keep showing us these. Honestly, I would not have cared. Honestly, I don't care because killing one leader is not going to solve the problem. But the fact that they keep pushing these AI videos down our throats, that's what made me suspicious. I'm like, why do they keep doing this? So maybe because, Benjamin Milikowski has a Libra stellium and all of this Aries in April, it's going to start to oppose his Libra placements. I'm wondering if like they're going to just come out and say it on this day on March 25th and be like, yep, he's gone. And they're going to say something like, oh, he died of natural causes. Like, sure he did. Sure he did. Okay. And what else could this be about? Yeah, the sun in Aries is like leadership, it's kings, it's, and then meeting with Saturn in Aries, Saturn is like legacy. Yeah, that's what I see. On March 28th, Saturn in Aries will sextile Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. So similar to the sun, now Saturn in Aries is connecting with Pluto at 5 degrees. I don't think this has ever happened before in our lifetime, right? Because we are just in a Pluto and Aquarius era, and Saturn hasn't made it this far yet into its transit. So I think this is the first time Saturn is connecting to the outer planet in a harmonious way. And this is why I also have so much hope, because the outer planets speak about collective power. And Pluto and Aquarius, while on the one hand is the plutocracy, is like things like Palantir and what's his name? Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, like all of the sort of technocrats who own this country, the United States, and also have all the power. Like, I think Larry Ellison now owns all media at this point. He owns Warner Brothers, Paramount, TikTok. That's why there's like this mass censorship. So that's one expression of Pluto and Aquarius, sort of this like censorship, them trying to take control of the narrative. And then Saturn, again, in Aries, we need Saturn. Camille Michelle Gray said this when we did our Saturn and Neptune. We did our Neptune episode together, but we also talked about how Saturn, it needs to be in its fall in order for the structures to fall. And I think Saturn in Aries connecting to that sextile to Pluto is our chance to sort of break down this structure through our people power. I saw a video the other day of, I don't know, the Europeans, they, again, French Revolution vibes. I saw a video of, I don't remember where it was in Europe, but they were burning down the weapons manufacturing facility that sends the weapons to is not real. And I was like, that is so Saturn in Aries, sextile Pluto in Aquarius. It's like burn it all down. Like burn not all of it, but like burn that shit down, you know? What it's really going to take to create change is through shutting down those manufacturing plants of the weapons. It's also and I don't know, okay, so I usually keep this to myself or when I meet people, when I meet comrades in IRL, my unhinged ideas for the revolution. But like, Saturn is borders. And I'm just thinking of like the last time Saturn and Neptune were in Capricorn was the fall of the Berlin Wall. That was 1989. Some wall needs to freaking go down if you know what walls I mean. There's so many in this world, just apartheid wall, if you know what I mean. How can that come down? I'm thinking like in an Aries way, you know, with harm to none. I'm just saying karma is real. What you reap, you sow. So I'm not saying anybody should be, they're just getting their due. Okay. So that's what I told my mom. I was like, I don't even need to hex people because they're just getting what they've wished for other people, what they've done to other people. But how can we actually take real action? Because Saturn is like what's tangible. How can we take real action, Aries, to really bring down this empire? How can we help usher that in? How can we help like be the death doulas? Saturn and Pluto are both gods of death. In traditional astrology, it's Saturn, and in modern astrology, it's Pluto. Pluto is the god of the underworld. How can we help that? First, it always comes from within, right? The revolution starts from within, Aries. How can I start to bring down that empire within me? How am I divesting from corporations, and I always think like, there's a connection with Saturn also to Baal, which is a god that I think the Israelis sort of worship. And people have asked me if they're the same god, and I think they're related. I have to do more research into that. But when you sell your soul to the devil, which I think a lot of Zionists do, or a lot of people do, like in the music industry, in Hollywood, when you sell a piece of your soul in exchange for fame, money, and power, you sell a piece of your creativity, the creative principle that makes us all a part of the collective consciousness, makes us all a part of God, right? God is within all of us and is within each other. It's in everything. And so when you sell a piece of your soul to the devil, you're selling a piece of the ability to co-create. And that's why colonizers need to steal land, Saturn. They need to rape and pillage the land and take power, control, Pluto. So how can we then transmute those energies, heal that trauma within each and every one of us, the ancestral healing, the intergenerational healing, healing from our trauma? Because like rape is a tool of the oppressor and they do that on purpose, So how can we heal that within us so that we can all come together to, again, that's internal work that we all individually have to do, Aries. Whew, okay, well, it's officially dark, so I think that is my cue to end this forecast officially. Oh my goodness, the next time we do this, it's going to be April. So have an amazing week. I will see you in April. Bye.